everybody, welcome back to True Crime with Andy Hale. I've got my buddy George Jared back again, who we've had on here several times. He always has the most interesting cases. This guy, I've said, is the hardest working investigative journalist I know. Let me just go back through some of his accolades. Some of you know him, but he's a true crime author, award-winning investigative journalist, covered murder cases, other types of news stories for nearly 2 decades. Wrote 100 stories about the infamous West Memphis 3 case, which included a death row interview with Damien Eccles. He profiled those experiences in his book, Witches in West Memphis. A Lyon College graduate, began journalism career in 2004. Months into that job, started covering the Rebecca Gould murder case in Melbourne, Arkansas. Wrote about her case with other books, The Creekside Bones, Whispers in the Willows. He has been a featured speaker at CrimeCon. He's been featured in the New York Times. I could go on and on and on. Won numerous first place awards with the Associated Press Managing Editors and the Arkansas Press Association. Member of Case Breakers, a national organization dedicated to solving some of the most notorious unsolved crimes, including the Zodiac murders. And I could say more. I'm cutting it short because I want to get rolling. George, great to see you, and what an impressive background you have.
Thank you, Andy. I never think about it that way till you say it like that. So
you kind of forget sometimes, like, all the things you've done in your life, you know?
Yeah.
If you kind of just like you're on to the next case, you know? So today, we've talked before about the West Memphis 3 case, which has been fascinating. Today, we're going to talk about the case of Linda Malcom. Tell me who she was, where you heard about it, and tell me how she died.
Okay, Andy. So let me, I guess, just give you a real quick chronology of how we do this. So Jennifer Buchholz and I, we don't know what to call each other. She's a counterintelligence agent in the U.S. Army for a long time. She's a criminology professor. She's an investigator with the El Paso County Sheriff's Department in Colorado Springs. Her and I met through the Rebecca Gould case that you mentioned a few minutes ago. And what we did in that case is we were actually able to lure this serial killer onto a Facebook page, and he talked to us for over a year before he got caught. And the victim that he has been identified, that got him convicted, basically, is Rebecca Gould. And so our idea, we lured him onto the page. He had sent us over 600 messages altogether.
Creepy.
Yeah, it's insane. And so after that case, after he got arrested, we thought, can we replicate this effort again? Like, could we take another case and do this? And I think, actually, Andy, we did an episode on Rebecca's case, so your listeners can and viewers can go and check that case out. It's absolutely insane. Yeah. So we took on another case. I guess we solicited submissions from people around the country, and we were approached by a family in Lubbock, Texas, and we did another investigation into the Deborah Sue Williamson case in Lubbock, Texas, which to this day, unfortunately, is still unsolved. But I think we interviewed 30, 35 people. We went to Lubbock several times and all this other stuff. And it was a stabbing victim, too. And so after we got done, and we're not done with Debbie's case, it's just kind of in limbo right now till the police are able to make an arrest or make some movement. So we decided to take on another case. And we, again, solicited submissions. And we got Linda Malcom's nephew submitted her case. We boiled it down. We got about 80 submissions, and then we boiled it down to kind of like 5. And I'm not going to lie to you. Linda's case kind of stuck out to me because I grew up in the Northwest. I grew up in Oregon. I live in the South now. But I kind of wanted to go tackle a case up in my, old neck of the woods, so to speak. And so, and there were things about her case that were very interesting. Linda was stabbed 24 times, which is, you hear the term a lot when people are stabbed. You hear the term overkill. And a lot of times it's not overkill, it's enough to kill. You know what I mean?
Yeah. There's some passion and vengeance going on there.
Yeah. I mean, 24 times, you're heading into another level. That is literally overkill. So there were some aspects of it. There was an arson, and I've got a very, very good friend who's an arson expert. And I have another very good friend who is a knife expert. And so Jennifer and I decided we were going to team up and take on this case. And just to give you an overview, a quick overview of what happened, Linda was she was in the Navy, and then she left she was in the Navy, I think, for about 10 years. She settled in Port Orchard. She's originally from Illinois.
Port Orchard, Washington?
Port Orchard, Washington, yes.
Okay.
And she was in the Navy. She got out of the Navy, and it's kind of a naval town. If you ever go there, there's a lot of ships. It's on Puget Sound, so a lot of Navy veterans settle there. And so she settled there. She became a paralegal. And listen, and Jennifer and I have never tried to sugarcoat, and her family doesn't sugarcoat some of there were some aspects of her life. She kind of had a risky lifestyle. She was bisexual, and these are all kind of factors when you're investigating. Your pool of suspects or potential suspects. If it's, if they're just, if they're into just one sex, there's the pool. But if they're into both sexes, that opens it up to all sorts of different possibilities. She had dabbled in drugs some. She was single. At the time of her death, she was 47 years old. She had also gotten into trouble with some drug stuff, and it was I don't want to say minor, but it wasn't really that big of a deal before that. But anyway, so on or about April 30th, 2008, a call is made to 911. This house is on fire in Port Orchard, Washington. The firefighters arrive. They find this house engulfed in flames. It was still structurally intact once they got the fire out, but it was very badly damaged. And in one of the rooms, they found Linda's body. It hadn't really been burned up very much. For as bad as the fire was, her body was basically intact. She had been stabbed 24 times. She was found nude. She was found on the edge of a waterbed. And so they immediately knew this was a homicide. And so they began an investigation. They had some suspects early on. One of them was kind of like an on-again, off-again ex-boyfriend. And the police really thought he did it, but there was really no evidence to tie him to the crime. Hours before the fire started, we know that she went and bought about $116 worth of groceries at a local grocery store. She talked to at least one person on the phone. There was really we didn't have any major indications of who could have done this. Now, obviously, the number of wounds to her, because she wasn't just stabbed. She had a contusion to her head, and she had other wounds all over her body. So this was and I think Jennifer has described this as a very dynamic fight, meaning Linda fought her attacker fought her. And so that's kind of the synopsis of what happened to her. So kind of our methodology and process is Linda's nephew submitted the case. His name is Michael. And ironically, so we took case submissions from all over the United States. Well, Jennifer is she teaches criminology and forensics at AMU University, and she lives in Colorado Springs, as I mentioned before. Michael lives 20 minutes from her.
Oh, wow.
And we had no clue, like there was no way to know that. And so we've actually been able to meet up with him before, and his mom. So what we did, and this is what we always do, is we will go to the town where this happened. We try to always be there on or about the date of the murder, because there's so many things that you can tell. You want to see what the trees look like around there. You want to see what the vegetation looks like. You want
to,
you want to get an idea if the perpetrator, did he run behind the house? Did he park somewhere? And so you want to see it in real time, what it looks like. And it's very valuable. It tells you a lot of things. And so Jennifer, I think, has been up to Port Orchard 3 times. I've been up there once, and I actually went up on the anniversary a couple of years ago. And actually, Linda has several sisters, like a bunch of them, and they all met us up there. And so we went up there, and we just wanted to interview people, talk to people who knew her, try to get an idea of, form our own person of interest list. And so that's exactly what we did.
So a couple things stick out at me, because I didn't know much about this case at all until you told me. I was expecting somebody to be younger. When you said the Linda Malcom case, for some reason, I'm just thinking somebody in their 20s. 47 just seems a little bit older to me to be getting murdered. It seems like, in my experience, a lot of the cases I deal with, it's a younger person for some reason. So 47 kind of stuck out at me. And right when you said she was found naked, I was asking if she was fully clothed or not. So she was naked. And with the house being burned, I'm assuming you wouldn't know if there were clothes nearby or on the bed or whatnot. I'm just wondering if she was naked voluntarily or not.
She probably was. Apparently, that's how she preferred to sleep.
Okay.
Was naked.
What
So
time was the fire?
approximately 4 o'clock in the morning, the firefighters arrived at like 4:21. Two neighbors tried to get into the house before the firefighters arrived, to try to get her out, but the flames at that point were too much.
And when did you say she bought her groceries?
Earlier the previous day.
Okay.
Yeah, so we've got a receipt where we know she spent some money buying groceries. And it was also interesting too that she bought the groceries she did because she was in the process of moving. The people who own the house were getting ready to tear it down, and she was actually moving that week. And Andy, I know you've moved before, and it seemed a little odd to us that she was buying groceries. Most people don't buy groceries like the week they're moving. You know what I mean? Like you
Yeah.
just kind of eat out and you just move all your
Let's
stuff.
let's finish what's in the pantry and then hit the road.
Right. That's exactly right. So that was kind of an odd detail to us. And she loved to frequent this place called the Golden Grill. It was like a bar right on the bay. So we went in there and hung out with some of her friends and bartenders and people who talked to her and all this kind of stuff. And that was kind of our initial process in the case.
Were you able to, well, not you, but when she was found, you said her body was not really burned very much. Was there an autopsy? Was there any interesting forensic findings?
Other than the fact that, well, she'd been stabbed 24 times and always had these injuries, 4 of the wounds would have absolutely been fatal. And so that's why, I don't like to use the term overkill because I think it's overused. But this was an overkill. Whoever killed her, this was a crime of passion. They had to have, is it possible that some stranger just came in here into her house, or possibly was there a burglary? It's hard to tell because obviously the fire destroyed a lot of stuff. Those are all possibilities, but they're very low on our possibilities list, just for the simple fact that it happened at the time in the time of mourning that it happened. They had to know that she was alone, number one. And again, you're right, Andy. Somebody who gets murdered at 47, you're quite literally looking at
I'm not saying older people don't get murdered, but it just,
right.
It seems more like a young person's, I don't know. I think younger, yeah, I don't know. It just seems like younger people it's a time in your life when maybe you're mixed up in the wrong crowd or the wrong place, or it's a young female or, a 47-year-old woman. It happens, but I was surprised, and I'm probably putting too much emphasis on that. I don't want to sound ageist here, but a couple other questions I had. Do you know where on her body she was stabbed all these times?
It was a variety of places, Andy. It was quite literally, mostly, I think all of the wounds were to her upper body, but they were on her front, her back. She had a stab wound to the side of her head.
What's interesting when you said probably somebody that knows her, like I think typically crimes of passion, crimes of vengeance, where somebody's stabbed that many times, it's like the offender really has a real anger issue with the victim for some reason. Let's say it's an ex-spouse or ex-boyfriend or what's interesting though is in the Idaho murders case, apparently this Brian Koberger stabbed one of those girls. I forget the number, some crazy amount of times. So it's an example where a stranger felt the need for some reason to inflict that much punishment so who knows? But was there any evidence of anything else on the body that was noted, or was it pretty much just the stab wounds?
She had a blunt force trauma to her head. So she either was hit with something, or like there was like a bedpost. So you can imagine if there's this dynamic fight going on this waterbed, that maybe she fell and hit her head on the post, or somebody just grabbed her head and rammed it into the post. One interesting thing that we were able to do is we have a very good friend. His name is Jeff Schaefer, and he's a knife expert. And he was able to determine that the knife was a very thin bladed knife, and it was like a one-sided knife, kind of like a kitchen knife. He said it was 4 to 5 inches long, so it's very possible that this knife may have just been a weapon of convenience. Like somebody comes in the house, grabs a kitchen knife, and then goes in there and does it. Or, Linda was in the military. Is it possible she had a knife, in her room next to her bed, and this perpetrator comes in, and she grabs a knife, and then somehow the perpetrator gets the knife away from her, and then starts stabbing her. She wasn't a real big woman, but she was in the military, so she had been trained to fight, things like that. So we were able to, this is what Jeff determined about the knife. So it doesn't seem like it was like there are like, I hate to use the term, but like professional knives, like a military dagger or something like that.
Yeah, well, that's what the Idaho murders was. He got, I went into Amazon and bought one of these, I forget the kind of knife it was, but it was, a knife, like a hunting knife, really.
Right. That's two-sided and has a hilt,
Yeah.
Because what a lot of people don't realize is that stabbing someone is really hard, and you often end up hurting yourself too.
Yes.
If it's not the right kind of knife.
Yes, you do.
Because blood gets on your hand, and it'll slip down the blade. It'll cut you.
I've heard that many times. So with the house being burned, I guess there couldn't be an assessment of whether there was forced entry or not.
I think that what we determined with that there actually wasn't any forced entry that we're aware of, but the doors obviously were burned up and melted.
The fact that it's 4 a.m, makes it sound like somebody snuck in at 4 a.m. intentionally.
Well, Andy, let me say this: the fire was started at 4 o'clock in the morning. She may have been murdered several hours earlier, and then the perpetrator or someone else came back. That's a working theory we have, is that she may have been, because of the condition of her body, and it was actually, they found her within a few hours of her being murdered, obviously. They can't really, there's no finite time that they could identify, I guess is what I'm trying to say. So the person could have came back.
What's interesting, too, is in this day and age, you said this is 2008.
Mm-hmm.
It's predating like all the Ring cameras, because my gosh, now like on any given block, if you walk down somebody's block and commit some act of criminal activity, you're going to be on the Ring camera. I mean, like pretty much every house now has a Ring camera, and it's so easy to get detected when you're going anywhere. Was this a residential neighborhood, like a regular residential neighborhood?
Yeah, it was.
Like with houses on each side?
Yeah, there were houses around there, and there was like there's some wooded areas around there too. But yes, it was a neighborhood.
And at this point in time, do you have any kind of short list of suspects? Or are you just really just starting from scratch?
Well, Andy, yeah, we have a list of suspects, and I can tell you this right now. I've been doing this for a really long time, covering a bunch of murder cases all over the United States. And Jennifer and I have talked about this. This might be the longest list of suspects. I mean, literally every single day, a front runner emerges, and it's just so insane. Like, because the facts in the case, they just change ever so slightly. And I mean, literally, we have tracked down, I'll say persons of interest, for sure. People who have information, but we've literally tracked people all over the United States, like we were in Florida.
Wow.
Oh,
you really put the miles in. I mean, that's one thing I'm so impressed with you, is I've heard these stories where you will go any and everywhere and knock on doors, confront people, talk to people, like boots on the ground. This is not somebody sitting behind a computer running searches and checking social media. You are like knocking on doors and walking into bars and going wherever you need to go. I'm impressed.
Yeah, that's what we do. I mean, we usually try to go together, obviously for safety reasons, because some of these guys, could potentially be murderers, and in fact, several of them that we've confronted, I'm pretty sure are murderers, even if they haven't been charged yet. There's one guy in one case. I walked right into his work. As soon as he saw me, he took off running.
Wow.
And he
knew who you were, or he just knew you were there to talk to him?
He knew. Yeah, he knew who I was. because this was like at noon, and there was a guy that was standing next to him when he took off, and I said, "Hey, is Paul here?" And he goes, "No, I think he's done for the day." And I went, "It's noon." And the guy's like, "I don't know what to tell you." He goes, "You want me to take a message?" And I said, "No, just tell him I'll be back." And he goes, "Well, how will he know who you are?" I said, "Trust me, he knows who I am, and he has my cell phone number." Because I tried to call the guy. Of course, then I tricked him, Andy. um, he because he was potentially involved in a stabbing case in Texas. And I had a theory. This woman had been stabbed in her carport. I had a theory that the person who stabbed her went into her house and cleaned themselves up before they left. And Jennifer disagreed with me for a while. I think she's on board with that now. But and the Lubbock PD disagreed with it too. And so I speculated on my podcast that that the police, because the police have evidence, and they're going to try to do some touch DNA testing on it. I speculated that they were going to do some touch DNA testing on the towels that they actually did collect from the bathroom. 1 hour after the podcast comes out, guess who calls me for the first time?
Interesting.
Him.
Interesting.
And he tries to come up with some cockamamie excuse as to why his DNA would be in that bathroom.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
And this woman was married. She had kind of dated this guy before. And not really dated. They'd gone like to the movies together and stuff. And then he was friends with her future husband. Well, her future husband was going out with a woman, and then they stopped dating. Well, then this other woman immediately wanted to date him, and a year later they're married. And this other guy was just upset by it. And so anyway, if you ever want to talk about that case, it is fascinating.
Well, we'll do that the next one. So was there any forensic evidence or testing that you can do now? Is there anything collected from the crime scene that you and your team can test or not?
There's nothing that we can test. The police have they have DNA. And so right now they are working some leads in the case. Andy, I'll tell you something not fun, but you're going to find this incredible that we did in this case. So we have an arson expert. His name is Alan Haskins. Great guy. Known him for years. He calls us up one day and he says, "Hey, I've got a house that's kind of exactly like the dimensions of Linda's house."
I already like this. Yeah, go ahead.
And he's like, "You want to burn it down and see?"
Wow.
And so me and him go out there with this whole crew of firefighter, like students, like the local fire academy.
Yeah.
So they surround this house, and we wanted to test our theory, Alan's theory. I won't say ours. He had an idea of where he thought the fire started, which was interesting to us. And so, because we did have, I will say this, the Port Orchard Police Department, Alan signed an NDA with them so he could analyze the fire aspect of it, like all the information that they had. So he developed a theory about where the fire was started, and he thought it was started in a corner of the house that was furthest from the body. And it was by a window. And so he had a theory that the person may not have even re-entered the house to start the fire, that they may have. And this is why we think that the person came back, is we think they left, and then they thought, oh, I got either them or they told someone's like, well, you got to burn that house down because you got to get rid of all the evidence. So we had a theory that it started in this one particular spot in the house. So we go out there that morning, and I know everybody in the neighborhood is really mad because I don't think I've been around.
They got a flyer in their mailbox. Hey, you might want to stay inside this morning. We're going to burn a house down the block.
Right. And
don't walk your dog this morning.
And it was, I'll send you some pictures. It was unbelievable.
Wow.
And I hate to do we hated to do this part of it, but we found, somebody sent us a waterbed because we had no clue. Like I
love this. You're really kind of reenacting the fire.
Yeah. Yeah. And so, because we weren't sure, like even Alan wasn't completely sure, because we thought her body wasn't really burned at all. And we have her autopsy photos, so we know we saw it with our own eyes. So we thought maybe did the waterbed have some effect on the body? But then Alan was like, I don't think so. A fire like this will get up to, I don't know, 7,000 degrees or whatever it is. And that would just instantly melt the waterbed. So we decided to set this house on fire. I hate this for any of your listeners. We needed to replicate the body, so we had to kill a pig.
Oh,
And yeah, I mean, I went in there
that's
and put my hand on this poor pig, and I said, "Hey, instead of becoming bacon and sausage, you know what you're going to do? You're going to help us solve this murder."
yeah. You're doing some good work here.
Yeah, yeah. And not funny. Well, kind of funny. The guy the fire chief there in the town that this happened, I've known him for years. He he told me that he had to shoot this pig, before we put it in there. We were going to put it in there alive, obviously. And he shot this thing 2 or 3 times, and he said it just made him mad and started chasing him. Um, so anyway,
What did it show? What was the pig's body like after the fire?
so we set the fire, and this was our plan. We set the fire in the spot where we think it was set with some accelerant that, you can't tell for sure exactly what accelerant was used, obviously. But Alan, he's a fire expert. He's an arson expert. He set the fire with like, I think he set it with like charcoal starter lighter fluid, something like that, because it would be easy. You could squirt it in through the window. So he started the fire there, and then we were going to stop the fire exactly when the firefighters stopped it on like the second it was supposed to stop. So they stop it. Me and Alan go around to the window where she's in, and we take a temperature gauge, and it wasn't nearly as hot in that room as it was in the rest of the house. So then we go in, no damage to the pig at all.
Wow.
Yeah, it was crazy. So
Interesting.
I mean, we can't definitively say that's where the fire started, but we can say
And
that
see,
every dynamic is the same.
yeah, I love too in talking to you with a lot of these out of the box ideas, a lot of the creativity, a lot of like, what can we do? Let's think of everything we can do. I had a question on the DNA. Do you have any idea where the DNA was collected from by the police?
I think it was collected. Man, Andy, I want to say it was collected from like maybe a blanket or something like that. I'm not 100% sure, so don't hold me to that. But they definitely found some DNA that did not belong to Linda, and they found it in a spot that would be, I guess the word might be suspicious,
Yeah. The reason I asked too is I've had this experience a lot. This happened in my Starbuck Murders Chester Uyghur case, So the hair found on one of the victims in 1960. It's unbelievable that we could, just a couple years ago, 50 years later, get a DNA profile. Bodhi Technology got a DNA profile. It was not my client, Chester Uyghur. Obviously, CODIS didn't exist back then. So for listeners, CODIS is the national database of like DNA. But in order to be in the CODIS database, you have to have been arrested, because once you get arrested, your DNA can be taken and being submitted into CODIS. So if you've never offended, your DNA is not in CODIS. So what we did in the Starved Rock Murders case is we took that hair sample, we submitted it to a lab in Texas called Othram. You're probably familiar with them. They've been at CrimeCon the last several years. David Middleman runs that company, and they got a genetic profile from this hair, and we traced it back to one of 3 local brothers who lived near Starved Rock State Park, which is crazy that we could do that from a 1960 hair. So I'm wondering here whether you could try to get the police to submit the DNA to a company like Othram for genetic genealogy testing, because even though you might not get a hit in CODIS, you could build out a profile. If that profile came back to one of your suspects, wow, now you're in the red zone,
Yeah, and we have made strident efforts to make sure all that stuff is happening. And Andy, I'll say this: the police periodically meet with the family, and I've like on a Zoom call, and there has been some movement in the case recently. I'll say that.
Okay, good. I mean, I'm hoping that down the road we're going to have a part 2. So tell me anything else you want to tell me about in part 1 that could kind of, just be like a little cliffhanger, unless we've already talked about it, because it sounds like you're making progress. What I'd like is, a lot of times in these cold cases, the local police department either is understaffed, they don't have anybody that can work on it, or it's a big jurisdiction and they've got 500 cold cases. So sorry, we can't get to all these. Or a lot of times you have just police departments that just don't care. They're just lazy. Maybe the family's not advocating to do anything. And it's just, I think of how many Linda Malcolms there are right now, somebody that got murdered and it's been decades. And right now, the killer is doing something, right? So right now, Linda Malcolm's killer could be sitting in a restaurant eating some chicken wings, could be cutting his grass. Like, he's out there just doing what he wants to do, not a care in the world. Little does he know we're talking about him right now.
Right.
And there's a podcast talking about him. There's people on his trail, and perhaps somebody's a lot closer than he realizes. That's what I really find interesting.
I got to sit in on the last meeting with the family, and the police do have a couple of leads that they're working right now, like legitimate hardcore lead. Like there is movement in this case behind the scenes, just so you
That's
know.
awesome.
And if the killer's out there, he or she knows. Early on, I think that one of the problems in the case early on was that she had this on again, off again boyfriend, and the police kind of honed in on him, and he died like a year after Linda did. And so, and Andy, I've told you this before, it's just the easy, and you know this, you've been an attorney for a million years. It's just easier for the police if they can rule it an accident, a suicide, or they can pin it on a suspect that can't be convicted because he's dead.
Yeah.
It's
Case
just
closed.
easier.
Yeah.
Case closed.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah.
So that's just a tendency, and that's a tendency with law enforcement agencies all over the United States, big and small. Port Orchard is a very small force. I think we've dealt with at least two different detectives have had it in the last 3 years that we've been working on it.
Well, you know what this reminds me of a little bit? Have I talked to you about that case in Rains County, Texas, where the friend of mine's brother was murdered?
You have.
This reminds me of that. And you know what? I want to do a podcast with you to talk about that case where we'll flip roles. You can kind of interview me and I'll tell you about the case. But long story short, this is a guy who's a doctor in Chicago for listeners. He lives in the Chicago area. He's got a ranch in rural Texas in Rains County. Then he goes to like once a year to go hunting on his property, goes down there. And he had one guy taking care of the property. He had another dispute with a guy his cattle was not supposed to be on the property. Gets down there, texts his wife a photo of inside this little cabin, like, look at this. And there's like furniture that's not his. There's food in the fridge. Somebody had been living there. This is like 11 o'clock at night. By the early hours of the morning, there's a fire. He's dead, laying right outside the little cabin. It's ruled undetermined cause of death. And it's a little rinky-dink sheriff's department. And there is a short list of cast of characters of people that had interactions with him. And this is years ago. They finally did another autopsy. I hired a forensic pathologist to look over all the records and photos. He's like, this guy got strangled. This guy got killed. There's no what is it, like smoke in his lungs. He didn't die of the fire. He died, and then there was a fire. My point is, and this case is just sitting out there for years. Nobody's doing anything about it. Nobody's working on it. And it just, whenever I think about it in times like now, it gets me so agitated to think that somebody got away with this murder.
Yeah.
And it's just sitting there. So we're going to talk about that one too. It's the George Cronus case out of Rains County, Texas. Google it. I've talked about it before. I want to talk about that one with you again. So tell me if there's anybody out there that hears this, maybe in some, what you never know moment. If anybody has a tip about this case, or if they have a case that they just would really love you and your team to consider, how does somebody reach out to you?
There's a couple of ways they can reach out to us. We have a website. It's called Break the Case. It's a nonprofit. We technically formed a nonprofit to try and help, because we take on cases obviously all the time around the country. So we formed a nonprofit to kind of funnel all of our work through that. But if they want to go to the website, it's a landing page for literally every case we've ever worked. All the stories are there, YouTube videos, every interview we've done. The interview I'm doing with you right now will be on that page as soon as this comes out.
Amazing. Amazing.
So it's just like a landing spot for all that. So if they wanted to just go there to get information, there's also contact information, how they can contact us or contact the local police department, the Port Orchard Police Department. All that information is there. They could also join we have a Facebook group called the Unsolved Murder of Linda Malcom. They could join there, and anytime we have an update in the case, we always post there. Sometimes we post other, like if there's like related cases, different, murder cases, that have been solved and stuff like that. So we post there all the time. We have a pretty active group in there. A lot of Linda's sisters, they're all in that group, and so if you have any information, you can either contact us or contact the Port Orchard Police Department. I think we still have we have an anonymous tip hotline. I think we still have that. Sometimes, Andy, it's hard to keep track of all these.
No, what's amazing too is true crime has gotten to be so popular with people in terms of consuming it through television shows, podcasts, media. You and I know from going to CrimeCon, the huge audience, how that's grown. And what's interesting is now that you've got so many people who are interested in, especially like unsolved murders. So in my Starved Rock Murders case, I started a TikTok page, okay? People laughed at me like, why is this guy going on TikTok? Let me tell you, I have gotten a couple huge tips in my Starved Rock Murders case that happened in 1960 because I've had people tell me what their parents told them or their grandparents told them, things that align exactly with my theory of the case. And so, just putting things on social media now, there are so many people out there who are consuming the true crime stuff. You actually have a decent chance, if you can reach an audience, of finding somebody who knows somebody who knows somebody, and maybe this suspect, it's their ex-girlfriend, or I used to work with this guy, or, it's weird, wild stuff. So I just think in today's age, you've got the benefit of all these people who are eyeballs on the case, right, and listening to things. And I'm hoping even through some of these things, we'll spread the word. So I'm so impressed with the work you're doing. It's hard work. You are so passionate. To me, that is the most important ingredient to any job, passion. You check that box 1,000%. Is there anything else you want to tell me about the case before we get to a part 2 down the road?
Andy, I think that's it. There's a couple things going on that we just can't talk about right now, just for the simple fact that, we put a lot of pressure on the police, and I'm not, saying they've done, we really want them to go back out and canvass the neighborhood and talk to some of the neighbors who still live in the neighborhood, just to, get their recollections and, see, because we think at the beginning of the investigation, it was probably pretty poorly done. But it's so hard in these cases is that even when you deal with the family, they're mad and frustrated. It's, been 18 years. But they're frustrated, but the problem is that the mistakes were made by people who literally don't work in that department anymore.
Yeah.
And like in 2008, I mean, were they collecting DNA? Yes. Were they doing a great job of it? Probably not. Not like they would do today. And so if the mistake is made back then, some of these cases just can't be solved if they don't collect the evidence at the time. And so the family members get frustrated. Like our last meeting with the police, some of them were getting pretty agitated, and they had never gotten agitated before. And it's hard for me to tell them to calm down and be patient because I'm impatient and I never calm down because I get mad at them too, and I start blasting them. And,
what's awesome here, though? The case came to you through Linda's nephew. Is that it?
Mm-hmm.
I love the fact that you've got her nephew advocating for her. I love the fact you've got this person who said, you know what? No, I'm gonna advocate. I'm gonna do everything I can. Let's bring more. Let's try to shine a light on this case. I just think that right there, he's already done so much for Linda Malcom. Just to be the advocate. I tell people that all the time for cases I'm working on. Even if I can't solve it, the fact that we are telling the story, I think, has value. and shows that she was important. Despite whatever her lifestyle was like, despite whatever struggles she had, she didn't deserve to die. Justice needs to be served for her and her family. And I hope you and your team can accomplish it. And it'd be amazing to come back here to have a part two. So keep me posted. And in the meantime, if you have any photos of her when she was alive or any little visuals you can share, send them along to me and I'll include it as part of this story. I really appreciate you taking the time. I can't wait to jump back on here and continue the conversation.
Excellent. Well, I look forward to that too, Andy.